So now we have seen a sustainable product service system. We understood what it is about, three main typology. Let's go a little bit deeper. What are the win-win benefits as well as some limits? Okay. So we will see, yes, this win-win opportunity for sustainability. First, the economic win-win, then the socio-ethic win-win, some economic and competitive business, economic and competitive benefit aside from the fact that they are environmental and socio-ethically beneficial. Why some PSS are unsustainable, and we come to the example of a mobile phone that I have here, and some barriers that are there. If not, maybe SPSS will be all over the world already, and we will be already much more sustainable than what we are right now. Okay, we understood this is the paradigm shift. So we said it before, we move from selling product to selling unit of satisfaction, from individual ownership to assess and sharing, to innovation as a technology, to innovation at first in terms of new interaction among stakeholders. But why SPSS foster environmental benefits through economic interest? So this is the key question. So we saw something. We will see a few examples. So there is one first win-win economic and environmental benefits, and we are in a SPSS situation where the SPSS offer, where the provider is offering the product, retaining the ownership and being paid per unit of satisfaction, or offering all-inclusive the product with its maintenance, repair, and upgrade. Okay, so let's see some examples. So here we have a manufacturer of a bicycle that is taking care about the pre-production, so buying the material, the production and distribution of a bicycle, let's say an existing bicycle, as we are doing now. And if we are in this type of SPSS, like by sharing, the user is paid per ride time. How much I'm riding, I'm paying. If this is an existing bicycle, after a while the bicycle will be broken, so it will be at the end of its life cycle. Who is going to pay the cost of the disposal? The manufacturer is going to pay this cost, okay? And then the manufacturer or the service provider in this type of model offer, if they want to go on with the offer, they need to pay the cost of pre-production, production, and distribution of a new bicycle, if not the services offered, okay? Then the bicycle will be broken. And this is the usual way of designing bicycle, okay? But here we have a new, in this offer model, we have an economic interest or incentive in designing long-lasting bicycle. Why? Because that cost that we have there are cut. We don't have anymore the cost of the disposal. Okay? We don't have anymore, the provider don't have anymore the cost of pre-production, production, and distribution. Okay? So, at the end, the longer the product lasts, the lower the cost of pre-production, production, distribution, and disposal. Then it is in the economic interest of the producer and the provider to design and offer long-lasting product. Okay? Something that we saw, but this is clear. So we are related to one of the life cycle design strategy that we saw before. Okay? Design for long-lasting product. We are in a second situation, assuming such an PSS offer where the provider is selling a shared use of product or product components. Still with the bicycle, okay, we are in a bike sharing, and here we see this is the time in which the bike is used. It's used by 3 persons along the day, and it's not so intensively used. Okay, it's used. Could have been used a little bit more, but of course, since they are paid per time of use, they get some money related to the time of use. And here we have an economic incentive to do what? To make so that we go towards a system in which we have the highest possible use of those products. So towards a high intensely used product bicycle. So in this case, not all the time, but we design the system so that the bicycle will be used in this case by this other person, lighted in orange, these other types, because they get much more money. So the point is, again, here, the more intensely the product, the component of the product are used, the higher the profit. So there is an economic interest of the product service provider to design intensely used product. You remember, even this is one of the strategy of life cycle design. When we speak about design for life cycle optimization, has two big types, no? Long-lasting product and intensively used product. Okay? And here we have an offer model and PSS which lead towards this situation. So it's the provider that is saying to you as designer, you have to design a product and a service that makes the bicycle or whatever product it is to be used the most of the time possible, which is beneficial for the environment. Okay? Here is the third type, so assuming such an SPSS offer where the provider is selling all-inclusive the access to product and the resources is using it consuming use with payment based on unit of satisfaction where the product ownership remains by the producer. So let's see again one example to make this clear. So here we have a washing machine supplier. We have a dishwasher before. It's not that far, but it's here. That retain the ownership of this is you understood when we will be using a system map. This dot dash square is highlighting who is the owner of a given product. Okay, so we are moving this. Okay, the point. There is a legend up there, but maybe I give for granted something that is not. So it's not the user that is indeed washing the clothes, and the user. Okay, and then this washing machine is using energy, is using detergent, is using water, and so on. The user is paying per wash, okay? And who's paying the energy, the detergent, and the water? This type of offer, as we said, is the offer provider, okay? Because this is the deal. They are offering this with all included and so on, all right? And this is a usual washing machine as we are producing right now, all right? There is, in this situation, an economic interest of the manufacturer, service provider at the same time, to design a new washing machine that is very efficient in the use of the resources. Because the situation is the same. We are washing the clothes. We are paying per wash as we are doing before, but yes, something is paid, but much less is paid. Okay, so those costs are cut. And since they get the money, but they have to take away those other money that they have to pay, indeed, they are economically incentivized to move towards this situation. So more in general, the higher the product resource efficiency in the use phase, the higher is the profit for the provider in this type of situation. Again, here we move towards lifecycle product, lifecycle design strategy. There is an economic interest of the provider and manufacturer to design an offer for minimizing resource consumption during product use. Full stop. So it's an economic interest in following a lifecycle design strategy. All right? The fourth case, we are assuming such an PSS offer where the provider is selling all-inclusive access to the utility, energy, water, etc., for its production unit source with pay-per satisfaction. Okay, here there is an energy supplier that is offering energy. In this case, there is a diesel generator, and we are paying per use. We are paying per use, okay? But we are not paying the energy sources, which are paid by the energy supplier. But if they are coming from renewable resources, they indeed have a certain cost. This is the user situation. Let's look where there is an interest for the supplier in this type of situation to move towards a renewable or passive resource. Like, for example, using solar panel or small wind generator, energy, wind-based generator, and so on. Again, they are paid per use, but what happens is that they don't have to pay, the sun is there basically, so many of the renewable resources are not the cost, then it depends, but in many cases this is so, especially when they are passive. There is the initial investment paying the solar panel, but you have even the diesel generator that you may offer, so even that is a cost, and so on. And so you cut those costs. So the higher the use of passive renewable sources of energy, the higher the profit for the energy supplier. So there is an economic interest of the producer provider to design passive renewable energy resources. Again, that was something that was related to one of the life cycle design strategy. We move to a fifth one. So we are assuming such an PSS offer where the provider is selling or inclusive the product with its end-of-life treatment. Okay? So here we have the example of a fridge supplier. In this case, we can even say that the ownership goes to the customer. It could be or could not be, but it could be even there. But they are offering this with all-inclusive the end-of-life treatment. So I'm selling this, but as we said, I will take care about the end-of-life. So whatever happens, I will take care about it. Of course, we have this existing system in which the fridge supplier is paying for pre-production, production, and distribution cost. Then it goes to landfill when it will be the time. The landfill cost goes in this situation to the manufacturer and service provider because this is the deal. And this would be in the usual situation when we design the fridge as they are designed today, okay? There is an economic driver to move towards an easily recyclable fridge. Why? Let's see. Okay, first of all, if this is recyclable, we the producer avoid the landfill cost. Okay, this is a cost that they don't have. There are the recycling costs. This is indeed on the shoulder of the provider. This is true. But we have even other advantages because when we go towards a new fridge, in this situation here below, we can use recycled material into the new fridge because it has been designed for easy recycling. And if we look at terms of cost, we avoid which cost? The cost of the pre-production of some material. Pre-production is the cost of purchasing some material. If we are recycling material, we don't have to pay some material that we are using because they are recycled. So we avoid those costs. To say more in general, the more the material are recycled or energy is recovered, in another situation, the more cost of landfill and purchase of new primary material, energy, or compost are avoided, okay, for the producer and the service provider. So there is an economic interest in another life cycle design strategy to design for material life cycle extension. So to design for recycling, energy recovery, or composting. This is the sixth and last for the environmental dimension. So we are assuming such an PSS offer where the provider is selling all inclusive the toxic or harmful product with use and or end of life toxic management services. We saw the case of Uber, okay? In fact, I report, so there is here a lubricant supplier that is offering this to a company. And the company is paying the lubricant with all inclusive the use and end of life treatment. So this is into the cost of the lubricant, as we said. Sorry. So when is the matter of paying the cost for the treatment of toxic emission in use, who has to pay is the provider, okay? Because this is part of the deal. So they are paying. The same, because it's part of the deal, the cost of the toxic treatment at the end of life, when it's needs to be disposed, it's in the shoulder of the provider. So again here, this is the usual situation. There is an interest in moving towards known or low toxic lubricants or whatever it is. Why? Because we avoid the treatment of the toxic emission in use, as well as the cost of toxic emission during the disposal, because this is part of the deal. So there is an economic incentive in moving towards this type of problem. So the lower the potential toxic emission during the use or end of life, the more cost of both toxic treatment in use and end of life are avoided. That means, again, we are moving towards another life cycle design strategy we discussed before. There is the economic interest of the provider and manufacturer to design for toxic minimization. Okay? So to sum up, if we have this shift in the offer model that we saw before, there is the economic interest to move towards designing for with a life cycle approach and a functional unit approach. So for this life cycle design strategy that we saw before. I go fast with this because we already said when PSS is eco-efficiency, when the ownership remain by the provider, or the life cycle services are all inclusive offered to the provider, because there is a direct economic interest in designing, in reducing the environmental impact, and the direct possibility of the provider, especially if the manufacturer is the same who's offering this. You remember when we speak about the two cases of reverse simple and zip-car, especially in that case, to design and develop low impact products. We see now something related to the socio-ethical benefits, the win-win benefits in terms of economic and social dimension. Or another term, why PSS may be an offer that is more accessible and preservable over time to low income, either final user or entrepreneur or organization. Let's see again here one first example. So we have here a traditional product sale to now you get the icon. So we are selling a mobile phone to a final user that is paying the cost of purchasing this product. But to make this economically available or accessible or viable to all, is when we move towards an SPSS that is selling to final user the assets rather than the product ownership and paying per unit of satisfaction. Because they pay, okay, per use, but they avoid the pain of purchasing, which could be definitely unaffordable for many low-income people. Okay, now the middle class is increasing, and sometimes a mobile phone may cost. And so, to sum up, we avoid in this situation the purchasing cost of product, frequently too high for low income and sometimes middle income people. So product become more accessible to this type of context. And this improves the quality of life as well as far as some products and goods and services may give benefits to product and life. Okay? We can discuss whether the use of mobile phone is all the time very healthy, but this is another issue. I have two daughters with which I have to find some time about this topic. So this is the part. Let's move to another situation when we have a win-win socio-ethical economic benefit. So here we have a traditional sale to a final user of a product, where here we want to highlight the fact that the maintenance, the repair, and other costs, life cycle costs, are paid to a service company by the final user. Okay, these life cycle costs are paid by this final user. This become more preservable over time to all, even to low-income people, if we move towards an SPSS situation. So, for example, a situation in which the SPSS provider providing to the final user the product with all inclusive the life cycle services. Okay, so if this is so, the final user is paid per unit of satisfaction of the product, including the life cycle services. So they are not paying for the maintenance, for the repairing, for this. They are paid because this is all included offer. Sorry. So if something happened because we need maintenance, we need to repair and so on, this is paid by the company, right? Oops, I moved fast. This is correct. So the life cycle service cost that the provider had in the previous situation does not exist anymore. All right? And this has interesting implication because avoiding the cost of maintenance, repair, upgrade, which many times are too high for low-income people. I told you maybe the other time, making the example of, I think it was a solar grid case in Tanzania. Some cases you go in Africa, so there are donations of some product, pumping water or whatever, and they break, they don't have the money to pay the repair, so they remain there without any service, any water, any energy, okay? Because they don't have the money to do this. In this case, if the offer is organized in this way, the cost is not on their shoulder, okay? If this is so, we avoid the interruption of the product use. So they can go on using this product. Again, there is a quality of life that is preservable or sustainable even over time. It's not just that they have access to the product, but may give me some advantages in improving my life, but it gives even a preservable advantage during the time. Okay? Now I'm going to show you something that is very, very similar to what I said before. So nothing changed, but I'm speaking to another type of actor. I'm not speaking to a final user. I'm speaking to an entrepreneur or an organization. Okay, so it's a different type of user. Ha bisogno? Devo fare lezione? No, sì. Scusate. Siamo in ritardo? Sì. No. Okay. No, she want to come to clean, nothing bad, but can I come to clean? No, with all the respect, I mean, it's really, but now we're making sorry, I get mixed. So, we will make a cut here in the so we are in the situation, for example, where there is a product manufacturer between a traditional offer model is selling some working equipment, a saw or something to a carpenter or to an entrepreneur, a small entrepreneur, that is paying all the purchasing cost. But to make this economically available or accessible even to low income cost, it could be interesting to move towards an PSS situation, selling to entrepreneurs or organizations the access rather than the ownership of the product, of the equipment, so not the product. So we are speaking about an entrepreneur, okay? It's the same kind of situation. So the ownership remains there. So they are paying per use. So they are paying per use the saw or whatever it is, the other type of equipment for their working activity. So they cut the purchasing cost. So in this situation, in PSS, we avoid the purchasing cost of working equipment, which are frequently too high in low-income context. In some cases, in low-income context, okay? It depends on the type of equipment that we want to buy or we want to have access to. So, this working equipment become more accessible even to low-income entrepreneur and organization. Facilitating, in this case, the business startup. So the fact of empowering local economy. Again, as we saw for the final user, there is a second situation in which there is a traditional working equipment sale, in which if it is made in a traditional way, the cost of the maintenance need to be paid by the small entrepreneur. Okay, but if we are in a low-income context, this cost could be very high. So if we are in a PSS offer model in which we are not, in which these life cycle services are all inclusive in the offer, who's going to pay this? Is the provider, and is not anymore the entrepreneur or the organization that is paying per unit of satisfaction, including these life cycle services. So again, there is a cut of this life cycle service cost. But again, avoid this, or it's called the running cost of life cycle cost of this working equipment for maintenance, repair, and so on, that are frequently too high. What happens is that we avoid the interaction of use of the working equipment. So at the end, we make the entrepreneurial activity not only enabled, but even preservable over time. Okay? So it's the same discourse that we did for for the user, for the product. In this case, we are speaking about equipment, but you get to know how important is that even up to the level of who is working on the working side, let's say, that the local economy is developed. To complete this, I want to make a final observation. That is that, as we have seen, if there is a reduce, or if you reduce or we avoid the purchasing cost of either product or equipment, and if the product became more accessible to low-income content, so people or entrepreneurs, we indeed even open up new market opportunity for low-income context. Because if you are an entrepreneur in a context, in a low-income context, maybe you find a way to produce something, it's not said that you find some people that has the possibility to purchase or to buy this. But if this is offered as an SPSS, well, even local company with local community in low-income context, and when I'm speaking about context, I'm not speaking only Africa, I'm speaking even in Italy, in some places in which there are, even in Milan, we have area of people that have low access to this, and even in other contexts, very rich. So I don't like to speak about country, I always speak about context, okay? This is something I didn't say before, but this is why I'm using the word context and not country. So this has this benefit, so it has an interest in improving local economy, as well as by doing this, even improving capacity building on a local scale. So improvement in skill and so on. Okay? So more in general, improving the quality of life, both on the dimension of the final user, as well as the other side of who's providing products and services. Okay? So again, to make a synthesis, if we may have this shift towards SPSS, we move towards to design for improving the quality of low and middle income context, either it's people or entrepreneur, to make the access to goods and services preservable over time and improve on local economy, as we said before. This we can skip. No spec, I don't know why. There are still some socioeconomic and competitive benefits that we may take into consideration when speaking about SPSS. Since when you're offering an SPSS, you get the point that you have, you're not just selling a product and then you say hello to the customer. You have a longer relation with the customer, either is a final user or an entrepreneur and organization. So you are improving customer fidelity. Indeed, you know that we are in a very saturated market in which sometimes it's difficult to sell products. Now we are even in a crisis and we are trying to get out even for other reasons. But SPSS indeed offer it's a different type of offer, so it goes to a different share of market. So it's in economic terms, we are saying that it improves the strategic positioning of a company. So it opens up new market opportunities. Okay, so we are not moving where the market is very saturated, but we can find new opportunities. Okay. Said this, the story is not all nice, so there are some unsustainability issues. And here is the case of a PSS. This is a smartphone. Even a smartphone is offered, for example, and is accessible even for people that don't have so much money, and has and is this case is a product oriented, is offer a product plus a service. The service is a service for how to say, the deal. How much you pay for monthly fee or the minutes or whatever, so that kind of thing. So that's how to say. But they are offering even a delayed payment, so that you are not paying the beginning everything. So they are offering this kind of services, so that the payment is delayed over the 2 years of. But this is indeed a very sustainable product, because this is a product that becomes obsolescent after a very short time. So you make a deal, but then you anyhow you will change it, because a new offer will come which is cheaper with a new technology and whatever and blah blah. This is offered as PSS because it's both a product and a service. Is even more accessible, looks to be, but it's a product that then ends up landfill with very toxic emission, because you know, it has batteries and many other things. So like this is a PSS, it is, but it's not sustainable. All right. So it's not said that all PSS are sustainable. There is another issue, it's called some kind of rebound effect, is that when you are not the owner of a product, you may have careless behavior. It's not your own, so who cares about the car and whatever, so I don't care about it. Okay, this may lead to some unwanted effect, some rebound effect. On the side of the designer, we have to be able to design such a product that make the people try to behave well, or to appreciate the product they have, to share it in a way. So this was something related to not only the technical dimension, but maybe even to the aesthetical dimension of sustainability that we mentioned the other time. Okay. So if not all PSS are sustainable, we need to have some knowledge, we need to have some criteria, we need to have some guidelines, we need to have some tools to orientate the design of product service system towards environmentally, socio-ethically, and economically sustainable solution. And this is something that we will learn during this course, okay? In the coming lecture, and we will use some tools to learn about it. Some barriers, and with this I'm going to close the fact, the presentation, even because we are, what's the time, Lorenzo? I'm over? 17. Quite close. Okay, sorry, I think a little bit longer. Indeed, now one thing, PS product services is not really something that new, okay? Already service, the service share is really very high, 75, even more now in Europe, and in US is even higher, it depends where. So it's not that the services are not part of our society, it's not that PSS product services are not part of this. But so why they are not so diffuse? Well, not all are not all are sustainable, but there are some barriers both on customer side or user side, on company organization, on government, and even on designer. Okay, so briefly, when we speak about customer, there is we need a cultural shift from the fact that we are not so much used to have, so for example, the ownership of a product is something that many times is quite important. Now we have moved recently towards a sharing economy, so car sharing, bike sharing start to be accepted. A while ago that was not at all like this. Now we have some limit due to COVID, so this may create some constraint, and so we have to think about something. But there is some cultural shift because indeed the situation is different, especially to this. Up to a company level, indeed there is a need for a change in the way we approach the business model. There is a need in the corporate culture and company culture and so on. And many times there are companies that are designing, developing products and developing services, but the two compartments have been working with the Kone. They are doing both product and services, but the two are not speaking with each other, and so there is the need of improving even competencies and skill within company, as well as on a political level. We need indeed regulation and normative that favor this type of innovation. Finally, I was happy to read in this report of the EU, it was finally written, move toward ownerless product and offering lifecycle services costs. And I said, oh, finally, they start to understand something that we have been working and researching for. Okay, before we translate this in real and effective normative, it will take a little bit time, but hopefully not that much. Okay, and then indeed there is even something that we have to say to us. Okay, you are here to learn, for example, how to design sustainable product service system. Do you know how to do that? Maybe not. You will learn. Someone, yes, you will learn. So as you have to learn, even other designers need to learn how to do this. Okay, so there is even this type of barrier. Say this, so that there are barriers and whatever. Even in the words of the United Nations Environmental Program, since several years ago, they are really among the most promising offer model that we know, that we are aware of. Okay?